appreciation or gratitude, let that just flow. Let it immerse you in your whole being in just appreciation right now for the practice, for our friends. We can actually just really feel grateful for the refuges, the refuge of the Buddha, this quality in our own hearts for awakening. Just let that in, and gratitude for the Dharma, refuge of the Dharma, the teachings that I'm so grateful to know, that we are so grateful to know. And then the refuge of the Sangha, really being able to settle into this sense of support each week. Just invite ease and softness into your body as you let those refuges in. This week we're going to continue our exploration of the 7 factors of awakening. These factors that balance the mind and heart and prepare the garden, as it were, prepare the ground for awakening. Put the factors in our mind for balance. And so we'll settle in and I'll lead a guided meditation, just exploring these 7 factors. The first is mindfulness. The second is inquiry. As we establish mindfulness, inquiry rises naturally. Inquiry into our experience. As we explore with inquiry, wise effort and energy can rise, and that's the third factor. The fourth is the joy that can rise from the energy that brings us into contact with the present moment. The joy of being in the present moment. And this can lead to calming in the system, concentration, and equanimity. The factors in the mind of the awakened person. And so tonight we'll lead a meditation and offer an exploration tonight of mindfulness, but mostly inquiry, and inquiry moving into energy. And so settling in with your mindfulness, asking, is mindfulness present right now? The very first thing that the Buddha's instructions invite us to know is the factor of awakening present? So is mindfulness present in your experience? And then we can ask into the second factor, mindfulness of what? Mindfulness of the body sitting. So sensing the body sitting. And just what's it like to sense what's it like to sense the body, the whole body just sitting? What's that like? What's the body feel like right now? You feel the places of contact, the feet on the floor, hips in the chair. We can move our inquiry around to places that we know it's skillful to inquire into. And then we can continue our inquiry. What happens when we bring our mindful, soft, mindful, kind attention to places in the body, like the belly. Perhaps the belly is a little bit tight. Knowing this with our inquiry, with our investigation. And then with our discerning inquiry, we can know what might be wise. Can we invite the belly to soften? Notice what happens if we do that. Or did the belly soften all by itself just when you brought your attention there, your mindfulness there? Moving mindfulness to the shoulders and seeing how they're doing, and with our inquiry, just sensing into how are the shoulders doing now. And this brings discerning wisdom. We begin to understand maybe something happens when we bring mindfulness and inquiry to the shoulders. Do they soften? Do they get tighter? Or can we just hold whatever's here with a softness? Then holding the whole body in mindfulness again. Inquiring into the breath in the body. How is that like right now? What happens when we bring our mindful, open, kind attention to the breathing? Does anything shift? And does seeing clearly with inquiry help us to understand what's wise? Maybe we want to invite ease into the breathing and the body. See what happens if you do. We can inquire, does ease support mindfulness? Does ease support being present? Does having an anchor in the body and the breath, a place for the mind to come back to from thinking, does having this anchor support wholesome qualities in the experience? Does noticing if we judge the mind for thinking, how does that support ease, or how does that support agitation? What happens if we notice any judgment and then just let that be as a part of what happens and then return to the anchor? We don't always need these full questions, but this movement, this quality of inquiry, can become more second nature and help us move intuitively towards what's wholesome, what's helpful. And so just noticing every so often, oh yeah, mindfulness is present or not, or inquiry is present or not. Just every so often noticing that. As we settle into this anchor of body and breath, place to come back to when the mind moves away. Just reflecting back on our meditation together, using mindfulness to reflect and inquiry to ask, was this helpful? What did you do that was helpful? Dear friends, in our exploration of inquiry tonight, this second factor, I want to read something that Venerable Analayo offers to us. He says, mindfulness is not so much something we do, but rather something we are. What we do is to know, to examine, and to compare. This is inquiry. Sometimes when we hear the understanding of mindfulness as non-judgmental, we kind of get the idea that we don't compare. But we actively compare with wisdom. We compare, actually, we could say we compare with as much non-judgment as we can. But we are comparing in order to discern. So he says, what we do is to know, that is to know clearly, see clearly what's happening. We examine and we compare. All of these activities contribute to, converge on, and have their grounding in being mindful. Mindfulness itself here does not stand for an activity, but rather a quality, a way of being. This one quality, mindfulness, remains behind each of the exercises of the 7 factors of awakening. And so mindfulness is paired with each of the factors of awakening. So mindfulness is paired with inquiry. And so I thought we could do a little inquiry using our mindfulness and inquiry tonight. Have some fun with that. And see what we can discover when we inquire into the breath. And so I'm going to read one of my favorite inquiries into the breath. This is written by Susan Moon. I'm going to read a piece by Susan Moon, who's writing about her dear teacher and his investigation, his inquiry into the breath. And her teacher is called Tofu Roshi. And Tofu Roshi has written a book with Susan Moon that is a compilation of letters. It's called Letters from His Students. It's called The Life and Letters of Tofu Roshi. It was written in 1988. And this is a letter to Tofu Roshi. And then he answers it. So it's, Dear Tofu Roshi, when I meditate, and this is an inquiry into the breath, this letter and response. Dear Tofu Roshi, when I meditate, I seem to exhale more completely than I inhale. And consequently, by the end of the meditation period, I feel quite deflated. What do you think I should do? Signed, Prudence Bird Whistle. Dear Prudence, Proper breathing technique is widely misunderstood. You are not alone in having trouble with it. From your letter, it sounds as though you may be making a common mistake, breathing in more times than you are breathing out. Let's see now. This is why we recommend counting breaths. Only by counting can you be completely sure that you are exhaling and inhaling the same number of times. One of my students uses golf counters for this. With her left hand, she enumerates inhalations, while with her right, she takes care of exhalations. At the end of the period, she checks to make sure the numbers on the two counters are the same. If there is any discrepancy, she takes an extra moment to even things up, adding the indicated number of exhalations or inhalations. But it is best to alternate whenever possible. Breathe in once, breathe out once, and then go all the way back to the beginning of the cycle and repeat. This is a basic principle of Zen. Sincerely, Tofu Roshi. So you may investigate your breath. Are you taking the same numbers of inhalations and exhalations? This could be a critical inquiry. Now, there's another inquiry that I'd like to share with you that was a discussion between a king at the time of the Buddha, King Milinda, and a teacher named Nagasena. And King Milinda, Nagasena was teaching inquiry, the second factor of awakening. And King Milinda asked Nagasena a question. He said, well, which of the seven factors is the most important? And Nagasena makes a case for inquiry being the most important factor. Now, I personally think that we could make a case for each of the factors to be most important at different times. But Nagasena is making the case here for inquiry to be the most important. He says to the king, does a sword, he's making a metaphor of the sword of discernment for inquiry. He says, does a sword placed in its sheath and not grasped in the hand succeed in cutting what needs to be cut? He says, in exactly the same way, Your Majesty, one cannot awaken by the means of the awakening factor of inquiry without the other six factors, but it is the sword of discrimination that cuts through delusion, the sword of wisdom that cuts through ignorance and liberates the mind. And so we have this sword of discernment, this sword of inquiry that can cut through delusion and liberate the mind and the heart. I have a picture of this sword that I want to share with you. I'm going to share my screen so that you can see a picture in the Tibetan tradition, a tanka of Manjusri, who is the bodhisattva of wisdom. And in their hand, there is, you can see in a moment, you can see this is Manjusri. This figure, this bodhisattva, is often described as androgynous, neither male nor female. And you can see in their hand here, the sword of discriminating wisdom. And you can see that there are flames coming off the tip of this sword. And what that indicates is that the sword can transform our experience. This bodhisattva uses the sword of discernment to cut through delusion, to see clearly what needs to be done with wisdom. And I was reflecting today that I have met in the last week a number of bodhisattvas who are using their sword of wisdom, their sword of discriminating wisdom, to see through delusion and see clearly what needs to be done. I have a little list of some of these bodhisattvas that I have met. I've met bodhisattvas this last week who are committed to seeing clearly and acting with responsibility still within their small bubble of influence. So in the COVID bubble, they're taking great care, and I've been inspired by them. I've been inspired by bodhisattvas who are using their wisdom to practice personal safety in their bubble in order to support community safety. And we've been bodhisattvas on this path in this way for many months. I've seen bodhisattvas this week, or met bodhisattvas who are working for affordable and stable housing for Métis families in Saskatoon. I've met bodhisattvas this week who are working to bring mindfulness into the community through grants. I've met, these are just a few, I've met bodhisattvas this week who are delivering volunteers for COVID relief within the core neighborhoods and asking for volunteers to assist on that. We posted one of these opportunities on our Facebook page. I met bodhisattvas through a film I watched this week called Kiss the Ground, who are working to raise awareness of the importance of soil health in combating the climate crisis. It's a beautiful film, very inspiring. And you know what? Our Sangha is working with 65 bodhisattvas who are trying to see clearly in the Unwinding Whiteness group, to see clearly our own conditioning in our white conditioning, and to make a difference in the world. And I'm also, you could tell I'm getting inspired. I have been so inspired by just reflecting on these ordinary, everyday people that I've met the last week, and that you've met too. I'm sure you've met people who are walking this path. I also am aware that our Sangha, our planning committee, and our whole Sangha is supporting next weekend a gathering for Indigenous and people of color next Friday night, and then a weekend for all cultures together. And we didn't know what would happen when we put this out. We want to support racial justice in the world. You will not believe it, but I mean, I'm astounded. We have like 45 people registered for that first Friday night. These are Indigenous and people of color across Canada and the States who are many new meditators coming together as a result of what our Sangha has offered. And we have almost 100 people for the retreat. And this will be a mix. This will be an opportunity for all of us that we don't often get to meditate in a diverse cultural field. I feel we can all walk this path. We are all walking this path of disordered discernment, how to see clearly what's the delusion that we're in terms of racial justice, in this case, in the world, how to see clearly there, and how to move with wisdom. My guess is that each person here is working in this in your own way. How are you trying to see clearly and then acting with wisdom? So those are just some of the bodhisattvas I've met this last week. So I thought we could just turn our inquiry together tonight and do a little inquiry together, just see what happens. See if I have any other things to share with you. Okay, this is from Joseph Goldstein. He talks about this quality that we have. He says, as with all the factors of enlightenment, the instructions in the sutta is to know whether the quality of inquiry or discernment is present or not. That's the first task we're invited into. So we're not invited, into being don't let bodhisattva scare you. Bodhisattva, beings that work with compassion for change in the world. Our first task in this bodhisattva path is to know simply, is inquiry present or not in our experience? That's the first thing. Then, so as with all the factors of enlightenment, the instructions in the sutta are to know whether this quality of discernment is present or not, and then how it can be developed and cultivated. In fact, the entire Satipatthana Sutta is a map guiding us in investigation, in inquiry. And in all cases, our investigation is in the service of wisdom, comprehending how things are as they really are and how to respond wisely. He says this is not an academic exercise. The wisdom factor in our minds is like an investigative reporter who digs deep to get to the bottom of things. In this case, understanding the very causes of our suffering and their end. And so let's do a little inquiry together. I am personally enamored a little bit with the chat box, partly because it helps me connect with the Sangha. I feel a little bit far away from you sometimes, and I just love the little chat box if we can fit it in, because I get to hear from you a little bit, and we get to connect with each other a little bit. So I'm going to invite us just to do a little inner inquiry and then use the chat box. And then I'll share, not everyone needs to do that. For those who are interested in doing that, you can share your response to the inquiry, and then I'll share that with the group. So let's just do a simple inquiry. Settle into your body and your breath. And I want to invite you to just try as hard as you can. Try really hard to stay on the body and the breath. Keep your attention on the body and the breath. Do not just stop thinking altogether. And just pay attention to the body and the breath. And we're just going to investigate in this how this feels to bring this kind of energy to our experience. So we're using investigation to inquire into how we use our energy. So try really hard as you can, to stay on the breath. And so I'm inviting you into this inquiry around energy. Energy is the third factor, and we want to learn through our inquiry how to use energy wisely. And so as you feel into trying hard, like just doing your best to try hard to stay on the breath, use your energy in that way, what quality is developed? What qualities are developed in your system? What qualities are cultivated? What sensations can you feel in the body? What happens in the heart and the mind and the body? What kinds of qualities rise? And whoever feels they wish to put a word in the chat about any of those qualities or sensations or what the experience is, go ahead and put that in the chat now. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm going to just read what we've got, and then I'm going to offer another inquiry. And so it's beautiful. We've got a whole variety, and it's wonderful to see this diversity. So we have different, I'll read them out. So, and just continue to rest in your body as I read these out. Spaciousness, openness, expansiveness, full of light, soothing, focus, wholeness, expansiveness. Trying hard, in quotes, brought in a sense of striving. There was contraction and tightness and self-judgment. Presence, silence, tense, forceful, brightness, tension, embodiment, agitation, increase in energy because it was hard work and I was not very successful with it. Letting go, peaceful, persevering. Beautiful. Thank you, everyone. Let's do one more inquiry together and just see what happens. So sense into your body and your breath again. And this time will be different for everybody. Just this time, what is it like to invite an easeful effort into just being mindful with the breath? Letting yourself noticing that you can rest back. Feel the support of the chair. Let the breath breathe all by itself. And it's bringing a very light touch. Just enough to be aware of the body breathing. Now just sensing what word might describe this for you, and it might describe it a little bit in relation to the previous inquiry, in comparison, in gentle comparison, or just on its own. What kinds of qualities rise from this kind of effort, this kind of energy, this kind of presence and connecting with the breath? And so, there's no right answer. Everyone will be different, and there's no simply. We're just cultivating the muscle of being able to sense in with an inquiry into our own experience. So, whoever would wish to add a word or two, just take a moment in there. And just stay with your own body breath as we allow folks time to do that. Okay, I'm going to read our words and just let them land into your experience. Peace, relaxing, opening, relaxing, settling in, a light, focused joy, tenderness, supported and connected, calm, grounding, relaxing, weightless, relaxed, no pressure, reverie, staying with the question rather than the answer, lighter, more spacious, expansive, healing, friendliness with the experience, more ease and acceptance. Trying, tight but too light, and I drift off. Comfort. So this is beautiful. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for the inquiry. Thank you for this practice in inquiry together tonight. Just beginning to, or not beginning, because we've been practicing for a while, but honing in on this sword of discernment, this sword of cutting through delusion, simply seeing how it is and what can support peace. And so in our own ways, practicing with the sword of discernment right in the midst of our meditation. And as we practice this more, letting it ripple out to see wisely, discern wisely, and act wisely. Seeing more clearly what feels skillful, what doesn't feel so skillful, and being able to discern and support our action internally and externally in the world. So let's end with these beautiful words of wisdom from each of us, just resting in this beautiful wisdom, this refuge of the Buddha in each of ourselves, the refuge in the Dharma of the teachings of discernment, and resting in the Sangha that really has supported us tonight in this inquiry together. Thank you so much. So let's just take a moment to let everything settle into the body, and then we'll dedicate the merit. May this knowing that we have in our very bodies support wise discernment in our lives. May this wise discernment ripple out and be a cause and condition for freedom, balance in our mind and heart, and freedom and balance and kindness and wisdom for the whole world. May this be a cause and condition for freedom everywhere. And a support for our own bodhisattva hearts, our own bodhisattva action in the world. Thank you so much, friends, for the support, your support tonight.